Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
A couple people sent me this story, and once in a while you'll see something happen where some people start scrapping, and you want to break it up, but sometimes you see them scrapping and you want to step back and just watch and see what happens. So a Georgia sheriff and a city sergeant threatened to arrest each other. From 11alive.com, the Towns County Sheriff intervened in the middle of a Hiawassee sergeant's traffic stop as part of a heated dispute between the police agencies. Sergeant said, "You get on my traffic stop again, I will arrest you." That's him telling the sheriff to back off. Happened last week at the beginning of an argument between the two North Georgia law enforcement officers. Sergeant James with the Hiawassee Police Department had just handed a traffic citation to a driver when the sheriff walked up and began questioning the driver. "I'll arrest you right now," the sheriff responded to the sergeant. As the sergeant tried to explain that surveillance video would show the stop began within city limits, the sheriff said, "Shut your effing mouth," according to body camera recording, which is obtained by 11 Alive and which is all over the internet right now, and you can watch that yourself because I watched it too. And that was found through an open records request. Twice during the heated exchange between the two lawmen, the sheriff called the sergeant an F-boy, using a swear word instead of the letter F. Once he was inside the patrol car and out of earshot of the sheriff, the sergeant called the sheriff a mother effer, also using a swear word instead of the letter F, according to body-worn camera recording. A dispatcher asked if the sergeant was okay, which apparently is a standard thing, and the sergeant responded 10-4 seconds later after the heated exchange. Now, the sheriff asked the driver, "Inside the city or out here?" And that was him ignoring the police sergeant who had just handed the driver a citation. So the sergeant hands the driver a citation, and the sheriff walks up and starts questioning the driver. The Towns County Sheriff's Office and the Hiawassee Police Department have been in an ongoing dispute over Hiawassee officers pursuing violators and suspects outside the city limits. Hiawassee is a city in Towns County on a lake near the North Carolina border. As an elected official, the sheriff answers only to the voters of Towns County. The sergeant answers to the city police chief, who in turn answers to the mayor. While the two agencies use the same dispatch center, Towns County 911, they do not have an overlapping chain of command. And that's one of those things is you often talk about the jurisdiction and who's got the jurisdiction over a particular place. We talked about the situation down there, I believe in Alabama, where there was a town writing tickets, and it turns out they're writing tickets on a piece of road that didn't pass through their town, among other problems they discovered. The sergeant can be heard telling the sheriff, "I'm not your boy," as the sergeant walked back to his patrol car, and the sergeant then added, "Thank you," several times. The sheriff did not return calls for comment from the TV station. A sheriff's office employee called back with the number of the city attorney, who said the sheriff would not answer any questions about the video or the dispute. He said, "My advice to the sheriff at this time is not to make any statements because this will be an ongoing investigation. The frustration exhibited by the sheriff on the video is a result of a broader issue and will be referred for further investigation by the proper authorities." Now, Hiawassee Police Chief Paul Smith issued a statement saying, "We regret that this unfortunate event occurred. The Hiawassee Police Department will continue to strive for excellence in safety and service to our citizens and visitors while working with all public agencies to accomplish that goal." A source close to the sheriff said the dispute began with a pursuit involving the same sergeant on Memorial Day. The sheriff ordered the pursuit terminated, according to the source, but the sergeant continued the pursuit. A source inside the police department says all of the stops have been initiated within the city limits, but Hiawassee is so small that drivers often don't stop until they're just outside the city limits. An officer in hot pursuit is allowed to follow a suspect into a neighboring or overlapping jurisdiction because if they weren't, people just wouldn't stop. They would just drive away. 11 Alive Investigates obtained a secret recording through an open records request for recording of Towns County Sheriff Kenneth Ode Henderson talking with and or about Hiawassee officers. On the recording, a man identified by a source as the sheriff tells his deputies to not fraternize with Hiawassee officers because they're enemies of the sheriff's office. The allegation is that the sheriff considers the officers of that police department to be their enemies. Sources in both the county and the city tell us that the Georgia Bureau of Investigation is involved, along with the town's county district attorney's office. It's not yet clear if those agencies have launched any formal investigations. What is clear is that the town's county sheriff's office and the Hiawassee Police Department are locked in a heated dispute. And this is, of course, the busiest weekend of the year for that region, so who knows if things will escalate or not. But it's an amusing incident. But unfortunately, it didn't go one step further, because that would have been what we'd like to see. One police officer attempting to arrest another police officer while they're both in uniform and they're both claiming to be doing their jobs. And it's not like a police officer who sees someone in uniform committing a crime. It's the police officer who says, you talking to a person I just ticketed is interfering with my ability to do my job. I'm going to arrest you for... That is the weird part. That's the weird part. So obviously it just had a little bit of argument to it, some name calling to it, some heated language to it. But the strange part, of course, is that you had a sheriff and a sergeant, two different departments, threatening to arrest each other. And the other thing you have to remember, and this is going to vary wildly from state to state. I'm simply talking in generalities here. I've mentioned before that many states have got multiple and overlapping law enforcement authorities. So, for instance, Michigan has the Michigan State Police. Michigan State troopers can be found in all corners of the state. We have sheriff's deputies by county. So a county will have a sheriff's deputy and the sheriffs who oversee the county. Then there'll be a town or a city within that county which might have its own police department. So, for instance, Calumet, Michigan might have the Calumet Police Department. Then the Houghton County Sheriff oversees the county, and then the Michigan State Police have a post there as well. And the question is whether these agencies have overlapping or exclusive jurisdiction. And I've heard of it going both ways, where they'll say, well, within the city limits, it's got to be the city unless there's something else going on. But I can tell you, just for novelty's sake, I guess, the Woodward Dream Cruise happens every year in August in Michigan, just outside of Detroit. And it passes through many communities, most of them in Oakland County. And so what happens is there will be a huge police presence during the Woodward Dream Cruise, police up and down the entire stretch of Woodward Avenue, including, mobile command posts and so on, police officers on bicycles, motorcycles, cars, and on foot. And literally like half of the police force of the state of Michigan is up and down the Woodward corridor that day. I can tell you that all three jurisdictions, the local, the county, and the state, will write tickets, and they don't care where they are. And they've got apparently the power to do that. And so I have defended people who got tickets at the Woodward Dream Cruise, and I was always amused by the fact that I'd get all these tickets from the same event, and they all look different. And so people could get a ticket, for instance, in Royal Oak, written by a Royal Oak cop, Oakland County Sheriff, or a state cop. All three of them working in Royal Oak that day. And that's possible. So what happens in a situation like in Georgia, I'm not sure. I suspect it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But the interesting thing is that the sheriff walks up and simply asks the driver. And many of you will say, but Steve, the driver doesn't have to answer. No, the driver doesn't have to answer. The driver could just ignore the sheriff. But if I was the driver, I'd answer the sheriff just because it'd be fun to watch what happens when these two start fighting. And we've all seen that before, where someone walks up and gets two other people to fight. So here we go. 11alive.com reports, and Justin, Marco, and Trocon all sent it. Georgia sheriff and city sergeant threatened to arrest each other, and hilarity ensued. Questions or comments, put them below. Otherwise, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Wherever you are, it's the place you need to be.